Module 1, Measurement, Units, and the Scientific Method. Manipulating units. Over the years, you have probably had lots of opportunities to measure things, and from doing that, you have a pretty good idea about certain units of measurement. Say, for example, you need to buy some rope for a tug-of-war contest. You tell the person at the store that you need a certain length. What units would you probably use? Well, in the English system, you likely would order that rope in feet. Maybe 20 or 30 feet of rope will do. But say you need to measure the length of a candy bar so you and a friend can evenly split it. What units would you use then? Not feet, but inches, right? That's because you need a smaller unit to measure a smaller distance. Well, there are several units of measurement for length, and depending on the range of distance you are looking at, you will use different units. That's why there is a base English unit. There are base units for other forms of measurement beside length too, such as units for volume and mass. So we have base English units for all of these physical quantities as you see in this table. But there's another system of measure that is used in science. It is the metric unit system, and it also has base units for these physical quantities. But the metric system actually is easier to use. That's because it takes base units and adds prefixes to them to create alternate units of measurement for larger and smaller quantities. Let me explain. If you want to measure the distance or length of an object, you will use the base metric unit, the meter. A meter is a little longer than 3 feet in length. If your object is a smallish object, like a coffee cup, you will need to use a smaller unit of measure. So you can add the prefix centi, which means 1/100th or 0.01. A centimeter, then, is 1/100th of a meter. Now, if you want to measure the distance between two cities, you will need a larger unit of measure. So you can add the prefix kilo, which means 1,000. Thus, a kilometer is 1,000 meters. Now let's look at volume. The base metric unit for volume is the liter. So if you need a small unit of volumetric measure, say to measure the amount of coffee in your cup, you can use the same smaller prefix centi and measure your volume in centiliters. A centiliter is 1/100th of a liter. But if you are measuring the volume of water in a swimming pool, you need larger units, so you might use kiloliters. A kiloliter is 1,000 liters. And that's why the metric system is so easy to use. The prefixes mean the same thing for all the physical quantities you will use. Larger quantities will use kilo or hecta as their prefix. This multiplies the scale of the unit by 1,000 or 100 respectively. Smaller quantities will use centi or milli as their prefix. This divides the scale of the unit by 100 or 1,000 respectively. Now let's go back to the English system. Each unit of distance measure is its own name, such as inches, feet, yards, and miles. Additionally, the relationships between the units are all different from one another. There are 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, and 5,280 feet in a mile. But when we think of volume measurements in the English system, we have to deal with ounces, gallons, and bushels. There are 128 ounces in a gallon and 8 dry gallons in a bushel, but only about 9 1/3 liquid gallons in a bushel. Confused yet? And imagine having to convert one English unit to another, like how many ounces are there in 2.5 bushels? Well, thankfully in science, we primarily use the metric system. To use this system, we only have to remember what the prefixes mean. If milli means 1,000th, then a milliliter is 1,000th of a liter. A milligram is 1,000th of a gram, and a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. Additionally, if we know that kilo means 1,000 of something, then a kiloliter is 1,000 liters, a kilogram is 1,000 grams, and a kilometer or kilometer is 1,000 meters. Get it? Add to this amazing ease the fact that all the prefixes are based on a factor of 10. Remember, these prefixes can be placed before the base metric units of gram, meter, and liter to measure all the mass, distance, and volume measurements you need. The more common prefixes you will use in this course are milli, centi, and kilo, so it's a good idea to become very familiar with their meanings. In fact, you need to know them well in order to take your first exam in this course. Can you see the versatility of this system? You can choose the prefix that best meets the needs of your measurement. Think of distance. If you want to measure the length of your pencil, you will use the base unit of distance, or meter, but you may want to use centi as the prefix, finding that your pencil is about 17 centimeters. But if you want to measure the width of a blade of grass, you will need a smaller unit, so you would use millimeters to find that the grass blade is about 8 millimeters wide. This amazing system is so easy to use and so versatile that scientists use it. Additionally, with the exception of the United States, nearly every country in the world uses this system as well. As you work through this course, you will be primarily utilizing the metric system. I may occasionally use the English system for reference to give you a general idea of size, but the metric system will be the major system we will be using.